Hello and welcome back to St. Thomas Aquinas for everyone. I am Dave Palmer and thank you again for joining me as we move through the Summa Theologia. Right now we're at the first part of the Summa where St. Thomas is describing the 7 attributes of God, and we have done 4 of them so far. Quick review. God, we have described his simplicity, his perfection, his goodness, and also that he is infinite, right? Those are the first 4. We've got 3 to go, and today's is not quite as confusing as infinity, and it's pretty straightforward. I think you'll find this to be one of the easier ones that we are going to study. All right, question number 9 of the Summa. Do you remember how many questions are on the Summa? 631. So you can kind of gauge that we've been doing this for about 2.5 weeks now. We're only on question number 9, so this is going to take a while, okay? Just take this year to study the Summa 10 minutes a day, and I promise you, December 31st, you're going to be celebrating that you have studied the entire Summa with me during this entire year. All right, question number 9 talks about God is immutable. All right, that means that he does not change. Now you probably know that, but what exactly does that mean, and how does Thomas describe it in the Summa? Before I get to that, I just want to point out that, as you know, there is change every moment in our life. And here's a few examples. The change in the seasons. Maybe you're in a place where you get really good winter and fall and spring and summer. But we do know that winter does not feel like summer and spring doesn't feel like fall in most places. So there's change in the seasons, which is actually quite beautiful. How about the change just in human development? You know, you go from a tiny little baby in the womb to old age through the course of 60, 70, 80, 90 years, and we're changing. We're not the same person today that we were yesterday. We're constantly changing a little bit, right? And so that kind of goes without saying. And how about the weather? You ever seen a 5-day forecast? I know where I live, one day could be 80 degrees, the next day could be 50. Okay, big changes in the weather. God has given us so many opportunities to see change. And for what reason? Well, I'll talk about that in just a second. And then finally, just traffic. I mean, these cars are not in the same position in 1 second as they are a quarter of a second later. They're constantly moving, they're changing, okay? And I could give 1,000 different examples, and you can think of other ones as well. But how does this all relate to the immutability of God? Thomas is going to explain it in 3 ways. Okay, very briefly, he says God is altogether immutable, unchangeable. First, because there is some first being whom we call God, and that this first being must be pure act, without the admixture of any potentiality. Okay, this should make you remember the proofs for the existence of God. God is the uncaused cause. God is the unmoved mover. Those were the first 2 proofs, right? For the reason that absolutely potentiality is posterior to act. Now that's kind of heavy, and I'm not going to get too much into that. Potentiality just means something has the potential to change, right? To be moved. Now everything which is in any way changed is in some way in potentiality. Hence it is evident that it is impossible for God to be in any way changeable because he is pure act, he is not caused, he is not moved, right? And here's an example. You see a golf ball on the tee. Well, your mind immediately starts thinking of that ball moving because you can just imagine the big club coming and whacking it, right? And it goes flying off the tee. Everything that we experience in life that has physical matter is that way. Things change. You know, I'm moving right now. You're probably moving. Okay, that's just part of our world. But God does not move because he has no potentiality. Secondly, Thomas says, because everything which is moved remains as was in part and passes away in part. Thus, in everything which is moved, there is some kind of composition, some kind of matter, some kind of material to be found. But it has been shown that in God there is no composition. Remember his simplicity? That's what we showed that image showing he isn't like a chair, he isn't like a person that has matter and form. No matter with God, right? For he is altogether simple. There you go, simplicity. Hence it is manifest that God cannot be moved. Isn't it cool how we keep going back, and Thomas is referring back to the proofs and the different attributes of God? I'm telling you, the Summa all ties together. That's why I keep saying, if you haven't watched the previous videos, go back and watch them. It's not too late. We've only done about 15 or 20 of these so far, I think. All right, hence it is manifest that God cannot be moved. All right, here's an example: the clouds in the sky. You ever looked at the clouds? I mean, for literally 5 seconds later, they're in a different place than they were before. They look different, they have different shapes, okay? They're just constantly in flux. God isn't that way because he has no body, he has no matter, he can't, and he has no potentiality, so he can't move. Thirdly, and finally here, because everything which is moved acquires something by its movement and attains to what it had not attained previously. But since God is infinite, here you go, one of his qualities, comprehending in himself all the plenitude of perfection. Remember, God is perfect. That was the second attribute of all being. He cannot acquire anything new, nor extend himself to anything whereby he was not extended previously. All right, so again, not to beat it to death, but God has no potentiality. He's pure act. Think of people walking on a busy street. Why are people walking? Why do we do anything that we do? If we're moving, it must mean that our current state is not perfect. Because if we were in a state of perfection, we just stay there, right? We move because we're trying to acquire something, get somewhere, get to a job, get to a restaurant, to eat, to drink, to sleep, or whatever, okay? There's something about us that's not perfect. God doesn't have that. If he were to change, that would mean that he would be different from how he was before, and God's perfect. Why would he want to change, right? So movement implies imperfection and potentiality, and there's none of that in God. Okay, so here's your homework. As you live tomorrow or the next day, you see a weather forecast, you see the change in seasons, traffic. I mean, we see this every day. You see an old person, a young person. Let your mind go there and say, you know what? God doesn't have any of this. It's not that this is bad. It's just that God has no need to change because he's perfect, right? So why would God change if he's perfect? But draw these connections in everyday life. We see 1,000 things every day that are changing. I mean, you're paying attention every single moment of every day. There's change. The time is changing, right? And that actually foreshadows the next attribute of God, but I won't get into that. All right, that does it. We are going through the attributes of God. We now have done 5 of them, and there are 2 more to go. The next one will be our next video, and so please tune in, comment below, like the video, and let me know if this is making sense to you. Do you have any questions? Are there any things, any examples that might make it easier to explain to people about these attributes of God? I'm very open to suggestions, and so please let me know your thoughts. Okay, I'm Dave Palmer, and this is St. Thomas Aquinas for everyone. Thank you for watching. God bless you.